EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome to another edition of Football 24/7. I'm your guy, Tone DeShields II, and I'm joined by my man, our Eagles insider, John McMullen. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys continue to stay engaged in the content. Y'all know what I always ask from you guys. I need this. We need this. It helps the content grow, helps more people like you, helps more Eagles fans like you find the content. And our guy, John, is always going to give us the inside scoop from your Philadelphia Eagles. If you want more from him, check him out on JAKIBsports.com. That's JAKIB Sports.com, and also check him out on SI.com as well. He does amazing work for them and for us as well. So, John, man, you know, day 9 of Eagles training camp, well, day 9 of media availability, and they were practicing at the link today. So, first and foremost, how are you feeling today, my friend?
Doing well, yeah. A little bit of a curveball going over to Lincoln Financial Field, but anything different this time of year is good. So, new players, new surroundings, feels like Groundhog Day sometimes. So it's good to get out in a different setting. And I think it juices up the players a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, there are a lot of guys, a lot of new guys on this team that aren't really used to playing at Lincoln Financial Field. I know they got their first taste of it this past Sunday playing in front of those fans, or practicing in front of those fans, rather. But, you know, I'm curious to know, with some of the new faces, the obvious guys, Miles Jack, Zach Cunningham, this is their second, I believe, their second practice or their second training camp with the team. So I'm going to regularly check in with you about those guys, because I think there's a large microscope on that linebacker room. So what are some things that you observed from that group in general, and particularly Miles Jack and Zach Cunningham?
Well, they threw him in first day, threw him into the deep end of the pool. Same thing continued today. I don't think we're going to get a feel for what it's going to look like until Nakobe comes back. Now, he did practice today, but limited fashion, didn't work in team drills. So he did individual work. So he's getting closer. Obviously, I wouldn't expect to see him play in Baltimore, but when Cleveland comes in for the joint practices, I think it'll be interesting then, and see how they go about it with Nakobe in there. Right now, it's interesting because they have Miles working, Miles Jack working on some first team work with Nick Morrow, and they also have him on the third team with Ben Sumerin. And then they kind of nestle Zach Cunningham in between that with the second team and Sean Bradley. From what I get the feel is they think Miles is more of the pass coverage linebacker and Zach is more of the run stuffing linebacker. It's very early. We've seen him for 2 practices, but that's kind of my early speculation on how it's shaken out. Maybe when Nakobe comes back, maybe that's what they do. Maybe they piecemeal that other spot and say, all right, it's an obvious running down or early down. Maybe it's Zach Cunningham. And then if it's 2nd and 10 or 3rd and 10, then you go to Miles Jack. They might do it that way, but they can do anything. I said the only 2 linebackers that are going to be on this team in New England are Nakobe Dean and Christian Ellis. That's it. Everybody else, they could be here. They might not be here. And I think the rest of the preseason, it's a true competition there. Who are the best guys you have? And maybe ultimately at the end of it, maybe says how he says we're still not good enough. And he goes out and tries to do something else. Everything is on the table at that position.
As it should be. I mean, there's too many unknowns in that room. The entire room, as a matter of fact, is full of unknowns. I mean, you could probably make an argument for guys like Miles Jack and Zach Cunningham. They have 6, 7. They have about 15 years, or I guess you'll say, 13, 14 years between the 2 of them of pro football experience. So, I mean, their resume is known, so to speak. But as far as what they'll be able to contribute in Philadelphia, and then obviously Nakobe Dean and Christian Ellis, Anthony Morrow, those guys, we have no idea what that linebacker room is going to look like and what kind of impact it'll have once the season starts.
Yeah, and I think the hope is that, the defensive line is so good and so deep that they'll protect those guys a little bit. Same thing with the corners, with the safeties, and you can't be strong at every position. Peter King again. He was in town last week. If you remember earlier in the offseason, he said he can't find a weakness on this team. He kind of doubled down and said how he built the deepest roster in football. He probably has built the deepest roster in football because every team has issues. But the Eagles have issues too. And it starts at linebacker. And by the way, it makes sense. Actually, it starts at linebacker and running back on the offensive side. And that makes sense, right? Because that's the two positions they devalue and they don't want to spend money on. So they're a little bit less there, which is how it's built. It's like I say about the defense all the time. You got to stop the run, got to stop the run, got to stop the run. A lot of people say that old school football philosophy. That's not what they're trying to do. They're trying to stop explosive plays. So it's a give and take. And that's how he's give and take. Those positions aren't as valuable as other positions. You spend less assets on it and you have lesser players. Makes sense.
Yeah, you especially notice it with the Eagles because the old adage goes follow the money, right? And when it comes to trying to figure out what the Philadelphia Eagles' weakness is, if you're the opposing offense, if you're the opposing offense and you're trying to find the Philadelphia Eagles' weakness on defense outside of the film, you can just follow the money. And the cheapest room, as it stands on their defense, is probably the linebacker room. And
probably.
well, I think about the safety room as well. They're pretty cheap there too. But you're right. The linebacker room is most definitely the cheapest room. But again, you want to find the weakness on defense, follow the money. And there's absolutely almost no money pretty much locked up in that linebacker room.
Yeah, I mean, the most, obviously Nakobe's a very young player, so he's on this rookie deal.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Ellis, undrafted coming in, obviously he's still on his rookie contract. Sean Bradley's in his final year of his rookie deal, on and on and on. So you go in and you get Zach Cunningham and Miles Jack for $2.5 million, and that's a splurge. Very similar to running back, as I mentioned. Boston Scott, the highest paid running back on this team. And you're right, to a certain degree, safety would be sort of third on that pecking order. But I think they hit a home run with Reed Blankenship. I mean, that guy is just a really, really good player. Just a really good player. I get a TJ Edwards feel with him. Just, he's undrafted. Nobody wants to believe it. He just shows up every day, does his job, makes plays, steady as all get out. And, people say, oh, but he was undrafted. I don't care. At some point, Chody and I talk about this a lot, and I agree with him. At some point, you got to leave the pedigree behind and say, all right, well, this guy can play. And sometimes they miss. And I think the NFL missed on Reed Blankenship because he has been just rock solid.
Yeah, speaking of pedigree, I think it makes me think about a former first-round pick in Derek Barnett. And, he was highly touted coming out of college. I believe he broke Tennessee's sack record and Reggie White's sack record at Tennessee. And, he was supposed to come in and be this wrecking ball. And, I feel like with him, it's not really a talent issue. It's always been a discipline issue. And
you're gonna hear a bunch of stuff because Derek got into it with Landon Dickerson, and I happen to be right there. So Derek has this reputation for being undisciplined.
Right. Yeah. Walk us through that situation, please.
I was 10 feet away from the defensive sideline, so the defense was not happy it was basically a wide receiver screen
Mhm.
on a competitive period. The Eagles were backed up. It was a 6-point play, as they call it. They have these competition periods with the offense and defense. The Eagles converted the first down. They got Landon got a good block on Derek Barnett or a penalty block from behind, depending on who you want to believe. And obviously, Derek's coming off the ACL, was not happy with it. Got up, pushed Landon. Blag comes out, the retaliation guy. But I can tell you the defensive guys were not happy. And there was a bunch of, come on, Landon, that's bull bleep and that kind of stuff. And, I've already seen it. Some guys who are on the other side of the field are seeing the penalty flag and Derek and that stuff and saying, undisciplined Derek Barnett. All I can say about Derek Barnett, I say this to Jody all the time. This organization and this team and this coaching staff think a hell of a lot more of Derek Barnett than most of the fan base. He's already working in first team reps. I'm shocked by how much they're trying to figure out a role for Derek Barnett. He's never lived up to that hype, as you mentioned, the goofy Tennessee hype and Reggie White. Like, for some reason, wearing the same helmet's going to turn him into Reggie White. But he's a good football player. Not a great football player. Didn't live up to his reputation as a first-round pick. But it's the same thing with what we're talking. If it works one way, it's got to work the other way. At some point, you got to get over it and say,
Right.
all right, he didn't live up to the hype as a first-round pick, but he can help me win. And that's where the Eagles are with him.
But I think that's why fans, right? Let me just talk about me, right? I think that's why I get so frustrated with the Derek Barnett situation, because I know he can be a contributor on his team. I know he can be a contributor on any NFL team. I think he's a good football player. I just do. And I think he's a violent pass rusher. I think he's someone who can really make an impact on a winning team. But then when you have these moments where you allow your emotions
that's the problem. He's got a reputation. And that, the reputation with the officials, that's tough.
Right. So that even lends more to my point. The fact that, I look at today's situation like this, right? Even though, let's say Landon Dickerson did land a cheap shot on him. I wasn't there. Some people say he did. Some people say he didn't. Regardless, right?
Was borderline.
Right. It was borderline. Let's live there. It was borderline. That was a moment. That was a teaching moment for Derek Barnett. That was a teaching moment. And he had an opportunity to go left or go right. He decided to go left. And that's something that you don't want to have to worry about that when you're a Super Bowl caliber team, right? And last season, the Philadelphia Eagles were a pretty disciplined team. Sure that they had penalties here and there, yeah, but you didn't really see too many illegal penalties, right? Or like unnecessary roughness penalties. You didn't really see too many of that. You saw like the Eagles were a pretty disciplined team, especially having 70 sacks on the season. They remained pretty disciplined. Excuse me. Barnett has to be better. It's just that simple.
Well, yeah, look, I'm never going to defend a guy for getting a penalty in a big situation or drawing a personal foul or doing that. The reputation aspect of it probably is a little bit unfair. I think people overstate these dumb penalties, as I like to call them. There have been too many, but people act like there's one a game or something of that nature. And, it's just not true. My bigger point with Derek Barnett is I don't see a role for him if everybody's healthy. And then it becomes, and I said, this might be the best problem the Eagles have, but I do think it's a problem. They have so many defensive linemen, and I'll say defensive front because I'm including the edge rushers. I'm including the Hassan Reddicks and Nolan Smiths of the world. They have so many defensive defensive front people, and they want to seem to get them all involved. And I think at some point there's diminishing returns there. Like, they've been very slow playing Jalen Carter. I want that guy on the stinking field when it counts. Maybe they get there. But I want him on the field. And all these other guys, they're NFL players, even guys like Moro Ajomo, who we got to talk to today,
right.
Janarius Robinson. These are NFL level players. But, when I have Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat, they got to be on the field in high leverage situations. Jalen Carter has got to be on the field in high leverage situations. Then you kind of figure out where you are with Fletch and Jordan Davis. And everybody else, Marlon Tuipulotu, heck of a player. Derek Barnett, could be a top 3 pass rusher on a lot of teams in this league. Even Kentavious Street, we never even talk about that poor guy.
Right.
These are all NFL level players. But, I'm not taking away time from Jalen Carter just to get them on the field. I mean, at some point, you got to say, all right, let's get the horses out there.
Do you think the dream scenario for the Philadelphia Eagles at defensive tackle is having Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis out there playing at the highest level they possibly can be, being a rookie and a second-year player? Do you think their dream scenario is to have those two out there starting and having Fletch rotating?
Yeah, I think ultimately, probably not this year, but by next year, yeah, probably. That's the plan.
That's assuming if Fletch comes back.
Yeah. I don't. This might be Fletch's last year, but we've been saying that for a while. But yeah, ultimately, they want Carter and Davis to be sort of the guys. And then you have the 50 front, with the 5-man front, which has generally been Davis at nose tackle, Cox and Milton Williams, who did I mention Milton, playing the 4-eye, and then the edge guys are Reddick and Sweat with the starting group in the 50 front. And then the 40's been mainly Davis and Cox and Sweat and Reddick as the starters, so to speak. And they're incredibly deep. And it's a rotational position. We want to keep guys fresh, but, I don't know. They might be too deep, as weird as that sounds.
Oh, man, that's a good problem and a tough problem to have, right? Because, like you said, you want to get all these guys involved, but there comes a point in time where you have to just bunker down and say, you know what, these are the guys. These are the guys that are going to be on the field. I have to have my best players in, like you said, the most high leverage situations. And this is going to be a really interesting situation to see Sean Desai navigate because, he's the new coordinator and he's still familiarizing himself with this roster and his personnel. And he still is trying to install and execute his game plan and, his concepts, so to speak. So I'm curious on your opinion when it comes to Sean Desai and how he's been, acclimating himself to this roster. There is a such thing as the curse of the gifted. Sometimes you can have so much. Sometimes you can have too many options, and you can be paralyzed by that. So so what's been your opinion of Sean Desai and how he's been handling these rotations and how he's been utilizing these guys?
Well, he's thrown the kitchen sink at the offense the past couple of days. He's trying a lot of different things. He rolled out a lot of big nickel without Nakobe Dean. He rolled out a 4 safety look the other day. He rolled out a 4 defensive tackle look the other day. He's trying a lot of different things, trying to figure out who can do what. Calais Ringo got some first team reps for the first time that I saw. He got beat by AJ Brown a couple times, but he was rock solid in coverage. He was on the Dickerson Barnett. He was the corner on AJ Brown on that play, and he got beat deep for about a 50-yarder, but it's AJ Brown. He was solid in coverage. So they're, Sidney Brown, I'm surprised how slow he's been. He's actually fallen behind Justin Evans the past couple days. So
Wow.
he's like the 5th safety right now. And Jalen Carter, I'm surprised how slowly they've thrown. But it's only August 9th. It's only August 9th. I mean, the safeties, Kayvon has played. That's a big surprise. He's played well to get himself in the conversation. Feeling out, and Jordan Mailata even mentioned it. I was a little surprised. He was like, he's throwing a lot of weird stuff at us. Basically, is what Jordan said. Now, I don't think that's going to continue,
Right.
but he's just trying to evaluate what he has and what players can do what and what they're comfortable with, and that's fine. But I would say, 9 practices. Typically, the offense was 7-0 before the defense won a practice, in my opinion. And today, I'd still give it to the offense. It was close, but I'd still give it to the offense because they can't stop the quarterback run. Can't do it. They can't do it. And now the good thing is they don't have to play Jalen Hurts, but
Right.
they can't stop Marcus Mariota. It's been really bad. Now I look at the schedule though, and they don't face anybody at the quarterback position that can really gouge you running the football until Josh Allen. And that's like late November, Thanksgiving time. So they're getting a break with the schedule, but boy, they can't stop it. And it's early, but it's not a positive.
Right. It's when you really think about the continuity that remains on offense and the lack thereof on defense, it's only natural, right, to expect many more hiccups on that side of the ball, and also to expect a slower pace of, I guess, development and cohesion amongst those guys. I'm thinking about what you said earlier about the big nickel situations, that being having 3 safeties on the field. Given the situation at linebacker, do you anticipate this team going forward with a lot more big nickel situations once the season begins? Because that's not something the Eagles are historically known for.
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. A lot of it depends on, what are Miles Jack and what's Zach Cunningham. I like if they can play. No, you're gonna see it every once in a while. If they can't play and you're not comfortable with Nicholas Morrow or Christian Ellis, which is possible, then you might see it a little bit more. But I always call it laboratory stuff. It sounds good on paper. I always go back to the 21 pony formation the Eagles rolled out in the Doug Peterson era. It was Darren Sproles and Donnell Pumphrey. It looked phenomenal in T-shirts and shorts at OTAs. And then the minute they had to block somebody, it was like, oh, we can't do this. Let's scrap that. So I call it laboratory stuff in the offseason. They rolled that thing out, and I swear to you, the first time they put it out there, Jason Kelsey bulldozed Terrell Edmonds like he wasn't even there.
Okay, I'm glad you said that, because it makes me wonder what are situations. And again, you've been covering this game for a long time. I always love leaning on your expertise, because you've seen many different defenses and you've seen reasons why they run certain defenses against certain offensive concepts. What are based off your knowledge of the game, what are some situations where the big nickel would be optimal?
Well, obvious passing situations, 3rd and 17. Like when Sean Desai rolled out the 4 safety look, it was end of game, a drill. I think there were 15 seconds left. Desperation for the offense it was about 15-yard line, somewhere 10-15-yard line. And he rolled out 4 safeties. And sure enough, Justin Evans got an interception. And actually, probably Janarius Robinson would have probably gotten the sack. They might have blown the play dead. But it worked, you know. It's like the old Jim Schwartz sticks defense. Yeah, you roll. It's 4th and 20. Roll that damn thing out there. You know, the fans hated it, but it worked. It worked. It did what it was designed to do. So, you know, and that's what Nick Sirianni's really good at. And he's obsessed and talks about it all the time. Situational football, situations. That's what it's about. If it's 3rd and 17, yeah, throw a bunch of D-backs on the field because they're not running it. So everything in this league is about situations, and the Eagles tend to be better at that than most, to give them credit.
Jumping over to the offensive side of the ball, I'm curious to know, when it comes to that offensive line, you know, they've added depth. You know, they got some veterans. They got, in my opinion, a great blend of youth, talent, and veterans. Obviously, Landon Dickerson showed why he is who he is today against Derek Barnett with the borderline play. But, you know, when it comes to the offensive line and the competitions, I also saw a clip of, I think it was Dickerson and Jordan Davis kind of going at it in one-on-ones. You know, what's been your evaluation? What's been your evaluation of this offensive line and how they responded to this very deep defensive line?
Well, the first team has been great because they are great. It's, you know, it's the best offensive line in football. Jason's an all-pro. Lane's an all-pro. Jordan could be an all-pro if he's healthy. Landon's a pro bowler in his second year. And Cam Jurgens has been fine. No issues whatsoever. They're really good. The backup offensive line, the depth has not been nearly as good, which is why, you know, think about since the beginning of camp, you know, they brought in Dennis Kelly. They brought in Josh Andrews. And who else? Who's the third one? I'm forgetting one.
I know they brought back Sills.
Sills is back. Yes, Sills is back. So that was more of the commissioner, obviously exemplars. But so they've added 3 guys, and you know they're all been relevant as far as being potential backups. Even Sills, you know, he's as soon as he got back, he's playing second team left guard. Josh Andrews is playing second team center. I mean, Marcus Mariota was awful for the first 7 practices of camp. Awful, just poor. And Josh Andrews shows up and he's had his best 2 days. That's no coincidence because he was playing shortstop. And, you know, when you're getting bad shotgun snaps as a quarterback, even if you get the football, it you know, it's over here or it's over. It's throwing off the timing, and we've lost tone. It's throwing off the timing of the potential play, and that's what's been going on with Marcus Mariota, and that's been better. So hopefully Tone will get back here on Football 24/7. If not, I'm just going to finish with one thing. I wanted to mention Mariota stuff, but also running back with there's been a lot of talk about committee approaches and things of that nature. I would say as of today, and today, got to look at my phone. Today's August 9th, so there's plenty of time. They haven't played a preseason game. Obviously, that's going to play, even though the Eagles don't value it, it's going to impact at that particular position because somebody's got to play running back. A bunch of guys are going to get carries. Jamal Singleton talked earlier this week, and he said, you know, you really can't evaluate at that position until the pads come on. So it's going to be very important, as are the dual practices with both Cleveland and Indianapolis. But as of today, Kenny Gainwell's the lead back of the Philadelphia Eagles. And everybody's chasing Kenny Gainwell. Um, and DeAndre Swift is sort of morphed into the third down back. And then they've kind of shared the hurry up responsibilities. But, people look at Kenny and say he's 5'8", he's 200 pounds. He shouldn't be able to run between the tackles, but he's this team's best runner between the tackles. And I'm including Rashad Penny. I'm not talking about Rashad Penny healthy in Seattle early in his career. I'm talking to Rashad Penny that's in camp this year. He's been better. He's been better. And right now, Kenny Gainwell is the lead back of the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm going to wrap it up. We've been about 30 minutes. Tone dropped off. Not able to get him back. I appreciate everybody standing with me as we try to get it wrapped up. But I appreciate it. All the listeners, Football 24/7 each day, 6:30. When the Eagles do have training camp practice, I'll be here with Tone. We'll be breaking it down. Make sure you watch it live or on demand on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. And until tomorrow, we got 3 practices in a row. The Eagles will be back at it. Practice tomorrow, off day. Then you have the first preseason game in Baltimore. Until then, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you tomorrow.